Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, StockWatch Nation, the stock mites, as we've come to call y'all. Welcome to the 10th installment, the 10th edition, the 10th sequel of Survivor 48 StockWatch. Join with me is the one and only dashing, charming, the one and only Josh Elliott Pickle. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. What an episode.
What an episode. What do you think about the episode real quick? Because I hated it. I thought this was the worst episode ever.
I was a little bit down. I was starting to become a really big Star fan
Yep.
this season. But it's just I felt that the narrative of last episode was going to build into this episode, and it kind of just got shot down. It's like they made a move and then they didn't. And now it worries me that there's going to be a trajectory for the people who are on the bottom now, especially not taking that, I guess, that 4-on-4 battle that they kind of depicted early part of that episode.
Yeah. So I think what I wanted to say, and I thought about this earlier, and I left a comment on Reddit, but no one liked it, so I'm saying it here. I think this is going to be an episode, a season that ages better once there's been time removed from it. Watching it week to week is very frustrating because it's basically there's no power shifts, right? But what we are getting are a lot of really cool and complex characters where all the side characters like Star, like not even David, but like Chrissy, like Charity, they've kind of gotten shafted early. Also, I like your Loggy buff. I'm wearing my Vula buff. So
Loggy.
Vula. But yeah, I mean, already Mitch is too scared to make a move. Tony would have taken that shot. That's why he's not. We're not calling him, Mitch Vlachos. And Daryl is mourning the loss of David. We apologize to you, Daryl. But yeah, no. So I think once time has gotten removed, people will appreciate the season more. It's just very hard and very rough to sit week after week. And I think this episode exemplifies that more than any other episode because we saw two players this episode get asked and get approached to make a move, and both rejected it. Didn't even lie. We had Mitch, who didn't trust Star because Star wrote Mitch's name down. That I think is unbelievable. I think that is just poor gameplay. I do think Kyle not wanting to flip on Joe makes more sense. I think Kyle phrased it wrong. I think if Kyle was just saying, hey, I don't want to vote Joe because I don't want Joe to be mad and Joe would be bitter, that I think makes sense. And what is up, Jay, as well. We have the whole crew here. We have the StockWatch crew. But Josh, any other opinions you have about the episode? Because it felt very narrow, a very linear episode we had today where it was just challenge, strategy talk, person on the bottom goes home. Season is a wash. Do you have any positivity to share with the season?
I feel like the thing that I wish to bring up to kind of like start our talk in the ranks is,
I mean,
my rankings drastically differed on the top from last week, only just because I feel that I'm bouncing between so many different options with who I feel could win this game. I feel like this is a really tough decision when it comes to figuring out who you truly want to follow. There's so many big characters that I feel deserve it, but there's one character who I feel gave some more information that dropped them for my ranking and opened up some room for someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm glad we're being a little facetious here and not, revealing all of our cards immediately. I'm also kind of just chuckling from chat as well because Jay, in contention for worst season of the new era, Honestly, I see it. I also love New Era Survivor. Season's a wash. If David won that season, um, a very under-edited for an eighth placer. That is true. The eighth place is usually a very powerful player, like Noel. I forgot who else. Not who's the eighth placer in 41 and 42. I remember them being like big players. Noel as well. Franny in 44. Yeah, Franny, Tiffany, and Shan. Shan was eighth. God dang. But I don't want to waste no time. I think we can talk about Star just briefly because what is Star's edit? What was her story? Why was she shafted? What is going on, Josh?
Star overcame a lot in this game. I mean, if we go back to like original Logi, remember Star was on the bottom just for having the wear advantage. If Star had got the idol and Eva didn't, get to keep it, I feel that maybe Star would still be in this game at this point. I don't know if maybe that was a recurring thought on Ponderosa, but one thing that really stood out to me was that whole conversation that Star had at Tribal with Jeff about, I'm not going to go based on what other people are going to tell me. I'm going to go off of my gut. Right?
Yeah. That was interesting.
Well, it was, right?
Yeah.
For me, I just felt like if you're going to go off your gut, and that was the time to play your shot in the dark when you were told to play your shot in the dark. For me, it's gotta hurt.
I get it, and I also don't. I think the way Mitch approached the conversation was very sketchy, and typically I think Star saw that as Mitch not being loyal and trying to remove as many votes in play as humanly possible. I think Star took it as Mitch is not going to flip. They might split the votes between me and Mary, but probably not. They probably just want my vote out of contention. Even if Mitch was being genuine and was trying to help Star out, I think Mitch also tried to not reveal his position. And so he tried to, honestly, I think this was the worst episode for Mitch by far. We'll get to Mitch when we get to Mitch. But I feel like the problem with Mitch this episode is he goes to Star saying, hey, you should play your shot in the dark. And Star's like, are they voting me? And Mitch is like, you should play it. It doesn't build trust. And Star knew she was on the bottom the entire game. Also, Gemini, to highlight this, I think they just never trusted Star. She was never part of the in-group. And they probably didn't talk that well about Star on a game level the entire season. It only got brought up now because Star was not shown at all this entire season because the editors love top-heavy seasons, which is a travesty. But I think Star, on another season, plays a really good game because she was able to connect with people. She was able to get away from her position on the bottom, and she recognized the steps she needed to take. She understood her position. She understood how to go about overthrowing the position. It just didn't pan out. She did not have the right cast. And yeah, and Jay, I think I kind of said it.
I agree with that, Will, because like I feel that maybe it could have been either right cast, wrong tribe, or just wrong cast in general. There were stronger connections that happened on that Logi tribe. We can't forget about Thomas and Bianca, and Thomas being brought in with Shaheen and Joe earlier in the season. I mean, that feels like a long time ago. I remember we were talking about Thomas being like a top player in this game.
Yeah.
And now Thomas is out of the question. So like there were so many stronger connections that happened on that Logi tribe. And I feel like Star just became the odd one out. So maybe it was wrong cast, but seeing Star, there's a lot of people that love Star. Like, there's a Star, what was it? I think there was like a Star Twitter account. Was there a Star Twitter account? Star updates? Something like that? I saw that somewhere on the internet, and is it Jay? Do you know about it? I don't know.
Star. I mean,
I
Star.
love Star this season. This season, Star was very entertaining.
Survivor needs to edit their like purples better, because this is the second season in a row where the quieter character is the fan favorite. There was Saul last season, who also had a really bad edit, lest us forget, and then now Star, who also had a bad edit, lest us forget. Do you know who else had a bad edit and has a bad edit?
Oh, I might have a differing opinion. So we'll see.
Bad as in invisibility bad, not in of. I mean, like, it's all right, but we're talking Mary now, who we both have dead last. Josh, what is up with Mary? This was kind of an episode for her. Good or bad is up to you, but this was an episode for Mary.
I mean, I think it's really fair to say that Mary is at the bottom at this point. Mary is number 7, hands down. Mary had her name written down at Tribal Council last night, and Mary is still the only person from not only original tribe, but is kind of on the outs, on the bottom, without an alliance member, and now kind of not even in the numbers. So Mary's going to have to play this out. Mary is going to have to go on a run. I think Mary's capable. Let's not forget, Mary did come in second at the challenge that Eva won. I think Eva's first immunity challenge that she won. But that's like we have to see a little bit more in whatever the comp may be from Mary. But I will say, I told you this, Will, and I'm gonna just throw this out here.
Throw it out there.
See win potential for Mary if Mary gets it. Look, Mary survived a close vote against Star, right? Mary was on the bottom for a lot of this game, for a majority of this game, if you will. And Mary played a successful shot in the dark play. We have yet to see, correct me if I'm wrong, actually. No, I don't want to say that. I was going to say, let me repeat this. Have we seen somebody who successfully played a shot in the dark go to the end of the game? Successfully. Talking like they would have been voted out. Shot
had
in the
they
dark.
not played it. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of count Rachel because while it was unsuccessful, the reason for her shot in the dark play, but I understand what you mean.
I'm talking like complete safety, like would have went home if I did not play this 1 in 6 shot at safety.
Gabler
did it?
Yeah, didn't he do it episode 1? No, he didn't. He said he was going to. That's my fault.
But was it? Yeah, okay.
But either way, the only issue with Mary is that the argument, if she makes it to final tribal council, is what should you reward more? An scrappy underdog who at no point ever took control of the game, or the people who are in power? Because I feel like Mary needs to go up. If it was Mary, Star, and Midge, that's her win equity. I think Mary sweeps handedly. I think Star gets some votes for like Cedric. But Mary sweeps. I think if Mary was there with Chrissy, Mary sweeps. The problem is Mary was never in a powerful position at all the entire game, and she's going up with Goliaths. It's not there's no one equitable to Mary. And so I think Mary both doesn't have the longevity for the game. I think she's going very soon. I don't know about the next episode, but I don't see her making it to the finale.
Okay, hear me out. We've seen Mary this entire game on the bottom, and Mary has somehow still been here. We've had conversations, episode 1, episode 2, where we're like, Mary is gone. There's no way she's making it to merge. Mary then had that tribe swap at a very crucial point where she played the shot in the dark successfully and kind of rejuvenated her game. It brought it back to life. And now Mary's still on the bottom and is still able to figure out a way.
But do you know who had a very similar trajectory to that, though, Josh? Romeo. Same guy. On the bottom the entire game, had one good move because I think he was doing pretty well in Ika. Shout out to the Ika trade, by the way. and but still made it to the very end despite being an underdog and lost handedly. You can also make the same case with Jake. Jake was a major underdog the entire season and lost at the very end. And I feel like, yes, it was Mary Not Say with the 9 lives, and like she's a big underdog. It's just she doesn't have the edit. She has had 0 confessionals across 3 episodes. No, 1 confessional across 3 episodes. That is not what a winner has. And if a winner breaks that rule, it's not going to be Mary. It's going to be Joe.
Really?
You know?
I feel like from Mary's point of view, you brought up a good point where you say, right, Mary wasn't able to take control of the game, but Mary did come into the game and was throwing people's names out there. She was still trying to get names to stick. She couldn't make anything happen because she had people that were already so tight that there was no way you could break into that from that point. David tried to do it, but I guess nobody within that alliance trusted David. So when they chopped the David branch off, out went Mary too. I feel like if Mary can figure out a way to outlast all that alliance and maybe take some shots in the next episode or find a way to wiggle in there, if Mary makes the moves at 7, 6, 5, goes to fire.
But she needs a crazy end game, and she needs an idol or an advantage.
So we talked about this, I think, the moment that shot in the dark happened, that whatever that episode was that we had.
Episode 3.
Episode 4 or 5?
3.
It was 3? When we had that talk at episode 3, or it was episode 4, whenever that tribe swap happened. I remember we had a conversation where we're like, at this point, there's a certain point where Mary is going to get targeted because Mary is on the outs, or Mary is just continuously getting shots thrown at her.
Yeah.
Mary is to outlast that entire trajectory. I mean, why shouldn't Mary win? Mary had what? She was the only member from her original tribe at 10? At 10?
Yeah, but like we've
all prior connections done. You had to replay the game at merge.
But my only defense to that though is that we've seen it before. Like, I feel like, no offense, but an underdog story like that, it's hard to compare anyone else because we've already seen it with Denise Stapley, a player who was on a 18-player season on a 3-tribe cast, go to every single tribal council. And so I think that kind of diminishes the next Survivor player to do it. Granted, it's a lot luckier to do that same feat now because of the amount of advantages and lost votes. And people are sus of Mary. I think she was thrown under the bus already today by Shaheen and Joe, as you said, Gemini. And, she needs 15 confessionals for the rest of the season. And I agree with you, Brian. Mitch is like a Torah.
I don't know.
Don't say I don't know, man.
I'm gonna keep fighting for Mary.
You can fight for Mary all you want. She's not gonna win, but you know what?
I feel for Mary because like Mary's sitting here like, please, Eva, can you play the idol for me? And like Eva's like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not playing the idol for you.
I do have one hypothetical for you then, Josh.
Okay.
I think you also know deep down that Mary's probably not the winner. However, it's a very top-heavy season. So I want to entertain this. How do you think Mary wins the rest? How do you think she makes it to the final tribal council? Let's just assume if she touches final tribal council, her story and being an underdog is good enough. How does she get there right now? Because she has no allies. Mitch, I don't think constitutes as an ally because didn't Mitch vote for her as well? Or no, Mitch voted for Star.
Okay. I think I have an answer.
All right, what's your answer? I'm curious.
We've seen Mary in this position before. We've seen Mary, and Mary's had her name written down before. And you know what? Mary's got nobody else from that tribe who knows how she plays that game. Mary can still pull the good old fake idol trick. Stay comfortable, act like nothing's happening, and make them all freak out. So I feel like if Mary's going to survive this, she needs to capitalize on a distraction. Something that other people can catch on to that pins somebody else as a bigger target. Throw Mitch under the bus. If you're really on the bottom and you want to ensure your safety, if you don't win immunity, make sure that Mitch is the next to go. They want to cut Mitch at 6 because Joe already promised Mitch 6. He already had a conversation with him. So it's going to be really tough to navigate that. Mitch is guaranteed 6 with Joe. Remember, Joe is a man of his word. So I don't know where Mary would have to navigate, but it would have to be on one of the bigger players. Unless Camilla's the one who takes a hit here and people go after Camilla.
I feel like the only people she could potentially go to be a mover and shaker is like Camilla, Shaheen, and Mitch, and like really hammer on voting out Joe and Eva. But even then, I just said that to Brian. I don't know how like delays work on live streams, but that's kind of crazy. That we had the same idea. And Daryl, I just want to comment too. I don't think Eva's moment with Mary was positive. I think it was toneless actually, because we didn't hear Mary's response to that.
So I have something to be quite honest with you. Actually, I'll say when we get to them, but there's a specific person that I do want to talk about who I don't think is playing good jury management at this particular point. And I'll tell you when we get to them.
I gotcha. Speaking of bad jury management, no matter how you want to slice it, Mitch, this was a bad episode for Mitch. Not narratively, not edgically, but in terms of straight gameplay, which is not really what we focus on here on StockWatch. This was a bad episode for Mitch. And I think narratively, it was okay. I just want to say, at the start of the season, like really early on, or maybe early merge, I hinted that I think Mitch could be a losing finalist. As this game is progressing, I think that is the case. I think Mitch might be the 0 vote finalist. Really? I don't think anyone votes for Mitch.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen is Mitch is going to be a very loyal player, and I think he missed the boat on making a giant move that is going to be his. I think now what's going to happen is another player is going to either go to him or he's going to win immunity, because Mitch like is oddly good at challenges sometimes, and he's going to follow along with someone else's plan. I think what could happen is Joe, Shaheen, Eva, and Mitch vote Camilla soon. And I think Mitch is going to get backlash. I think people are going to say that he's a follower, a floater, and not standing true to his convictions. I think that because Mitch was seen very early on in the season bonding with Joe and Shaheen, and then we saw that again today or yesterday, depending on when you watched the episode. But I feel like that is hinting towards something because we saw that twice. And I think that this 6 is going to break up. Whether that happens this next episode or the episode after, I think Camilla's the first one to go.
Wow. Okay. All right. I like that. I mean, I could see that Camilla's the next to go, but if Camilla wants to make a move, Camilla has to understand the place that she's in right now. And she needs Mitch and she needs Mary. She needs the both of them and someone else to flip. It's quite literally the only way that that's going to happen. And it should be Kyle. If Kyle's the only person that's needed to make something happen, I hope that Camilla's now like, I feel like there's going to be this power dynamic because honestly, I don't want, I see that it's Camilla saying, hey, I need to make a move. And Kyle saying, hey, I want to stick with these guys. I need to make a move. And I want to see them start to go after each other.
Yeah. I also want to make a quick addendum. I said Cedric would vote Mitch. I changed my mind on that. I don't think Cedric will vote Mitch. I think Star is going to go, not be bitter or mad, but I think Star is going to go back to Ponderosa and be like, we had this 4-4 vote split on a golden platter for Mitch. because he's on the bottom. He's not part of that group, and he didn't. And now I'm here, and I think that'll diminish it. I just said that earlier because there's nothing to really go off of, and Cedric and Mitch were shown bonding, which I think now goes into Mitch being a 0 vote finalist, because that's kind of the Ben edit of it all. And that's something too I want to talk about. Is Camilla's endgame still with Kyle? If so, do you think Camilla has a shot? Because I think there's two possibilities. I think either Kyle still hangs on to like the hero and honor and integrity thing, but then like we'll play a mischievous game, and so people get bitter at, or mad at that, or people will see Kyle as the one calling the shots and Camilla as the follower.
I will see. For me, honestly, I think I see Camilla getting more votes than Kyle if they're in the end, only because I'm stuck with something that Kyle said from the episode, where Kyle admitted that, oh, I don't want to burn any more people in this game. And it made me feel that the people who are on the jury are upset with Kyle. That means Cedric, Chrissy, and David aren't going to vote for Kyle. I think I'm starting to believe now that if Kyle goes to the end, Kyle probably won't win this game, or will have to fight for those votes of jury members who are pretty upset with him. So for me personally, Kyle is no longer my winner pick, but Kyle has opened up that room for someone else to take over, especially with the gameplay. People are going to be open to a different type of gameplay. And I don't think the jury's going to respect the gameplay that Kyle and Camilla have played.
Look, I'm going to bring it up again. I feel like bringing this up every podcast, but last night, or a few nights ago, I finished Survivor South Pacific. I was doing a watch along for a project idea that I have in mind. It is a defense on Survivor South Pacific. It is a top 5 season. Don't at me, but just everything about the game and the story and narrative is so reminiscent to how I think 48 can go, because I think that a potential jury might see Camilla as a favorable win because she was an outsider. Yeah. Let's not get it twisted. She is an underdog.
She is an outsider. No, she is an outsider still.
She is an outsider. So when we talk about her, when we talk about like Mary and Star and Mitch being outsiders who like underdog their way through the game, we can say the same thing about Camilla. And then I think a lot of bitterness will go towards Kyle and Joe and Eva.
It will go to Kyle. See, here's the thing. It's really tough for me now because I really loved Kyle for so long, but it's just the past few episodes, and by few maybe more like a couple of episodes, Kyle's gameplay has significantly decreased entirely. I mean, getting out David was great, but I feel like after a big move, it's always like a low move. And then Kyle has this confessional where he talks about his game and says, you don't have to make these big moves. And I'm like, I understand that. However, the people that you've sent home in not making those big moves are upset with you. And you make a great point. Camilla is on the outside. And I do feel that Camilla had a higher possibility of getting a shot taken at her just because she was on the outside. For that alliance to be completely under the radar and for nobody to even really suspect it except for David, and that to be alarmed to everybody, maybe that's just the calling to tell everybody else to say, hey, this was something that I put on the radar. And in the end, if it's Camilla sitting in the end, I was the one who told you that. And guess what? Maybe David's the one who's rallying the troops in the jury. And David's the one who's saying, well, I told Joe, I told Eva, I told all of them to make a move, and they didn't do it. And guess what? Camilla got all the way to the end. I don't respect Kyle because of that whole ordeal with me talking back and forth with him, but I will give it to Camilla because they got me. And I do respect that. And I feel like that's if anything's gonna happen, that might be the narrative of where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing real quick, just a quick addendum again. I'm not saying Sophie was an outsider. I'm saying she was the third party choice because they wanted to vote coach, but coach bombed final tribal council, which I think Kyle could do. Again, episode 2-3 callback where Kyle misread that David's situation was fun. And Sophie was kind of seen as the not coach and or Albert because you know I don't know. I want to get to Kyle and Camilla when we get to them because it kind of left Mitch in the dust, kind of like how the game is leaving Mitch in the dust. I don't know why I'm being so critical of Mitch, by the way. I love Mitch. I just think that he is serving better as a character than contender.
I was really upset because I feel like we touched on this. Mitch had the opportunity to make a move.
Yeah.
But Mitch said it right. There was a confessional where Mitch said, you know, in order to make a move with somebody, you have to trust them. And if Mitch didn't trust them enough, then that was what Mitch felt was the best move to make. We'll have to see in the long run if it's the best move for Mitch's game. But obviously, us as viewers, we want to see that happen. But maybe Mitch sees the game in a way that we're not seeing right now.
And I think it's just aggravating for the viewer because we know how tight that alliance of 4 is. I also understand that Mitch, we saw him have private conversations with Joe and Shaheen. And so I think he probably just thinks that he probably unionized it in a way where they make Mitch feel like he's more involved than he really is. And that's kind of the impression I'm getting, which in that case, Mitch is just getting outplayed and he's making the optimal moves, but to us, it is detrimental to say the least. Speaking of detrimental, I want to talk Camilla now. And the reason why I say detrimental is because Camilla is having a problem now where the time to make a move kind of has passed. And I'm thinking back to the split tribal. I'm thinking back to episode 7 where Chrissy says if they don't vote Shaheen, they're idiots. And even if Shaheen doesn't win, even like if it's Eva or Joe or Kyle, I still think that was the last time Camilla could have realistically made a move. And then I think voting David 2 tribals after wasn't the best move for Camilla's long-term gameplay. I understand the move because David was targeting her. I get that. You know, make the counter, do what you can. But it doesn't really help Camilla's endgame. And I think, honestly, keeping David and letting him be paranoid and really burn bridges with Joe, Camilla, Joe, Shaheen, and Eva would suit Camilla better. I understand why she didn't do that, but like, I am with Jay where.
Yeah, Jay, I'm with you on that. I see it too.
I have eliminated Camilla.
Camilla was my number 2. Remember, I kept having Kyle and Camilla at the 1 and 2, and Camilla just dropped here only because the opportunity to make a move, the last train just left. You know, the train just left the station now. So now Camilla's in a spot where either she needs to win an immunity or she needs to find an idol, if there even is an idol still out there on the beach.
I don't think there is, though. Because otherwise they'd be looking for it. The time for idols, honestly, is slipping past.
I think for 47 and 48, they specifically only did original tribe idols and never dropped a merge. Well, actually, no, I said this in another episode. They did drop a merge. They gave it to Rachel, but they didn't drop a merge for this one. Unless the merge one was Eva's safety without power opportunity. I think that's what the equivalent of it is.
Because she could have risked it for an idol.
Well, it's just the same person now. Like, yeah, it's just the same person now. So it's not like we're getting diversity with the advantages here.
Yeah, which I think is also why people, I want to love the season because I love character heavy seasons. I love tragedies. I love tragic survivor seasons. I'm an agent of chaos, as you could tell. I love dark age survivor seasons.
Nice.
It's hard because there's so many different ways to enjoy watching the same TV show. Like the way I'm watching 48 right now was different than how I watched, every other Survivor season I've seen outside of StockWatch. And the way I see other Survivor seasons when I go back now is different than how I watch StockWatch. And I'm having fun with the season. I think you are too, because our winner rankings have been changing every single day. Not every day, every week. And it's very unpredictable. So we're having fun. It's just not fun if you're wanting to watch gameplay. And yeah, Camilla at the start had a great edit. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. When Camilla gets voted out, Kyle will know, but won't vote for her. Yeah, I think every vote going forward is going to be majority to like 3. Because David was a 6-3, starts a 5-3. This next vote's going to be a 4-3. And then,
the minority is always a 3, right?
Minority is always a 3.
Okay.
And I also agree with you, Daryl. Honestly, I chalk up to anything suboptimal to just not being shown because it's not working out. So it's like, if we're thinking like, why isn't these two players talking? Maybe they have, and it just didn't work out and didn't mean anything, Like, why didn't Star campaign against Mary? Why didn't Star go and say, like, why is Mary such a threat? Bad example, because Star also mentioned that she didn't do that, but I digress. Anywho, is there anything else to say about Camilla so
I feel like I've said a lot about Camilla throughout the episode.
Yeah.
Like I said, like Camilla's a top 5 for me. I could see Camilla making the final episode, but Camilla also has, a lot more bigger threats to take out to her game, at least. If she sits with Kyle, she can steal some votes. If she's the only one up there, then Camilla could get some serious votes. I do see somewhat of winner potential for Camilla. However, I think after last episode, there are other players that are outshining Camilla.
Yeah. And we still like Camilla. These rankings aren't indicative of how we think about the players. I want to make that clear always as well, just in case there's any Survivor alumni somehow watching this, which I doubt. We're getting to Eva very, very, very soon, actually. We're going to take a quick ad break, Zans. I'm sorry you kind of came in during the ad break. However, we will talk about that because there's some disagreements happening. But we're going to take it over to Katie Tedesco, whose ad song is my favorite song ever. Take it away, Katie.
Hi, Survivor Now podcast listeners. I am Katie from KT Designs, better known as Katie Tedesco Art on both Instagram and Etsy. I have been designing and selling Survivor products for over 7 years at my Etsy shop, including replicas like hidden immunity idols and Survivor trading cards with all of the players' stats on the back. I am so grateful for Survivor Now for giving me this shout out and helping me reach even more super fans. I love listening to their podcast. So if you are looking for some really unique reality TV products for yourself or to give a super fan in your life, come check out my Etsy shop at www.etsy.com/shop/KatieTedescoArt.com.
I forgot to switch it over. You saw nothing. We're talking about Eva now. And I'm giving some time to let Daryl give his thoughts because I'm sure Daryl really appreciates Eva Erickson's edit so far, as Zan so eloquently suggested. You have Eva number 4, and I know you avoid outside platforms, but a trend I've noticed, especially on Reddit, I don't know about Twitter or Facebook, a lot of people think Eva is the Edgix winner. They think that she has the best edit. What do you think about her edit so far? Because we both disagree with that.
I don't think Eva's the winner. And my mind has completely changed on Eva. I don't think Eva has a shot at winning this game. I think Eva has had opportunities to really earn favor with the jury, but I don't feel that Eva's really capitalized on that. I don't think that Mary's really going to respect Eva not willing to, acknowledge a plan or be willing to work with Mary. I don't there I feel like there's a lot of times in the game where Eva has been very cold to the jury or the people who are being voted out.
Mm-hmm.
Just from my point of view, it feels that if it's your time to go and you're getting the cold shoulder, it's like, how does that really make you feel on your way out of the game when you're about to vote for someone for $1 million?
That
I don't know. I don't think Eva wins. I feel that her story right now is showing us who Eva is, but for the people who are on the jury, I think they're going to see Eva's way of playing the game as someone who didn't capitalize on those moves and kind of just stayed with whoever she was, stayed with her original tribe, and didn't really change on that.
Yeah. Brian, not to cut you off, Josh, I think the reason why Eva wasn't a target is because she has one very public idol and one slightly less public advantage. And so I understand why they would be worried. But even then, they should still target Eva to at least flush the idol. I know you want to stay in the game for 3 more days.
Nobody wants to even do it. They're afraid.
But
do it.
I feel like I would rather get idled out by the fan favorite, and I would rather that fate than get picked off trying to last one more day.
I don't think Eva's going anywhere. I don't see Eva winning this game anymore. I don't see her winning the game. I need to see a move besides, being given an idol from Star and winning an immunity that had a little scroll in it that you just happened to get a safety with how powerful. I don't think that that's going to be big enough to say you are the winner of the season. I feel that Eva's going to have a little bit more fight. But
yeah,
I honestly, my new winner pick is who I think is going to win. It's just with Eva, I don't think that the jury really is going to respect Eva's game.
Also,
I think last episode it showed.
Yeah, I will say the person with the first confessional of this episode was Mary. And it was about her being on the bottom and blindsided. And then it's Eva talking about Mary's reaction, and then they immediately had a conversation. I wouldn't call that confessional unnecessary. I mean, granted, any confessional can be labeled unnecessary or necessary when it comes to right after tribal, because that's really when the players are feeling most of their emotions or have the most frustrations that they want to air out. That's when we get the juiciest of confessionals. Mm-hmm. And so really you can pick any one confessional, but having Mary's right after David went is very important. That's just a classic storyboard technique. And then Eva, I think, also makes sense because her and Joe, not her, but Joe was targeted throughout the entire game, through the entire episode. Eva will win, trust that. My thing with Eva is that her edit so far does feel a little too positive. And I don't really like to take into account exit interviews, because I think exit interviews for Edgic is lame, and I think Survivor should edit their seasons. Nudge, nudge, season 41. No offense.
That's how I mean, Jay, you make a great point. That's how I feel, is that I feel that Eva is starting to give the cold shoulder to people who are outside the alliance and isn't willing to work with anybody who isn't there. Eva's loyal,
Yeah.
but there's a difference between being loyal to someone and being loyal, but like kind of ostracizing everyone else.
Well, I have a question too.
Eva's got her hands in too many bread baskets. Does
that makes sense? Do people talk about Eva as a person? Do they talk about her personality at all? Like, I understand people will hear about Eva in confessionals when it's about her alliance with Joe or advantages, but like, we don't hear people say, I think Eva is this, I think Eva is that. Even after Eva and Mary talk, Mary doesn't talk about Eva in a confessional. It goes right to her talking to Star, and Star's like, you got played, LOL. Which is hilarious by Star, by the way. But I think that is different. And like, people don't say anything about her. I think that kind of goes along with the idea that people in exit interviews call her cold. And I think that is a very important thing to realize when we talk about Eva and her winning edit. I will say I do regret having her at number 3. I would move her up to number 2 for myself.
really?
Yeah. It honestly makes sense with who I have at number 2.
Okay.
But we can get to number 3 for us if
All
you
right.
like.
Yeah, sure.
We kind of talked about him all episode. Give it up for Kyle Fraser. You have him at number 3. I'd like you to start with Kyle as well, just because.
I dropped Kyle down because I feel like there was a really big opportunity to make a move, but Kyle is so afraid of his game being blown up that I feel like it's not really making a move. I mean, Kyle played a really good pre-merge game, but post-merge, it's more using this alliance to protect you and kind of shield you. But what moves are you making with that outcome? You know, you had the perfect opportunity to twist it and turn it and get Joe, Shaheen, or Eva out. And a move wasn't really made. Now with 7 people left, and Eva still has an advantage for not only herself and someone else, that's going to start to become a real hard read to blindside somebody. I think there's one last opportunity for Kyle to make a move that can remind the jury why he deserves to win this game, and it's this next episode. If Kyle does not take it this next episode, and it goes to final 6 with the 3 from Loggy still having like all the votes they need to tie it, it's game over.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's game over. And I think that's the end for Kyle.
And that's with idle and safety without power.
Yep.
Don't forget, there's a very real world we live in where Joe wins immunity, Eva idles, gives the safety without power to Shaheen.
And then that's it.
And that's it. And then it's like, well, what then? Because then there's still the 2 votes, right? They are safe. Obviously the Logic 3, they lose a vote. But it's like they can kind of, do what Mike Holloway did in Survivor 30 or Malcolm in Karamoan. Just say like, hey, y'all need to target each other now. We're not going to reveal our cards. And I think that will kind of minimize a lot of mobility that Kyle has. Do I think that's going to happen? Not really. But I think Kyle has, like Camilla, been losing a lot of steam as the game went on. And now he's losing his killer instinct.
I agree. Yep.
And even if Kyle goes like, hey, we should vote out Joe. Oh, I misread that. I thought you're saying Kyle next episode is going to want to vote for Joe. But no matter what, it's kind of hard and complicated to talk about because Kyle and Joe, it's clear they have a bond, right? And it's clear that they are connected in a way that goes beyond the game. And so it's kind of hard to criticize Kyle's game move because it's so wrapped around in like personal feelings. And that's part of the challenge with Survivor as well. And I agree with Jay, where he's getting the Charlie Austin decoy winner edit at 56 confessionals, which is only 3 more than Stay. Fun fact. I think there's a small chance Kyle goes at Fire, or he's the second place losing finalist, I think. I believe that we are always hearing that Kyle and Camilla are the secret duo that is running the game. However, they had the perfect opportunity this vote to make a move, and they didn't capitalize off of it. And a lot of winners, they will have a narrative, a story, if you will. D and Jam, they both had a very similar story. They said, if you vote for me, write my name down or cross me, I'll vote you out. That was Jam's story, and that's exactly what happened throughout the entirety of 44. D had something similar where she was like, if you try to vote me out or say my name, I'll vote you out. Very obvious example when she voted out Kendra at the final 9. Which, if I'm right by that, by the way, I deserve a medal because that was a complete guess.
So are you saying that people who run with the mentality that if you write my name down, I'll vote you out?
No, what I'm saying is that those are 2 winners that have their story, that have a narrative. Kyle is saying how he's playing this great game and he's ignoring the first chance he can get to make a move, which I think is an important distinction with compared to the person we both have at number 1 who has a very different narrative, and that has been going strong. Yeah, the stories are great. I feel like the most stories are based around a bit of their experience in that lens and their survivor thesis. Yeah. Do you think Kyle still has a chance to win?
He does. I think his window of opportunity is drastically closing. But if he does take an opportunity, we need to see somebody from Loggy go home. If we see somebody from Loggy go home this next episode, I think that would be enough to wake everybody up and remind people who win this game. But if a Loggy member doesn't go home and all 3 of those Loggies go to 6, there's a problem. And then I'm starting to think that a Loggy member is going to win this season.
Yeah. And he would for sure be a deserving winner if he does go as well. And, that's the problem with Kyle. I feel like the way he talks about his gameplay, you would think that he would automatically win Final Tribal Council. But, again, I don't really think that's the case. And speaking of Final Tribal Councils, you've hinted towards a guy who doesn't have the best jury management and might have burnt a few bridges. I'm pretty sure this is who you're talking about. Otherwise, he would be number 1.
No, I was actually talking about Kyle.
Oh, you're talking about Kyle?
Kyle was the one who said that to Camilla when he said, I don't want to do Joe because I've already burnt too many bridges in this game. To me, that makes me feel that because, obviously the player is going to have way more knowledge than us as the viewer has. If that's how Kyle feels, that means that the people who are on the jury right now probably don't feel too hot with Kyle, and Kyle knows that. Kyle's had a really good intuition this entire game, so for Kyle to say that, it tells me that the jury probably isn't looking at him for the winner of this season. So I want to keep that out there. That's why I'm not looking at Kyle anymore. I'm starting to open up my mind for more people in this game because that's a big red flag for who I want to see as a winner, especially sending home David. That's a good point.
Yeah.
David goes home. Like that should be even more reason to say David is probably going to be a bitter juror and is going to be tainting that jury, but against Kyle. And I think Camilla is going to be the one getting the better half.
I think if David is a very bitter juror, do you know who he's going to point all that anger towards?
Joe.
And we're talking about Joe now.
Oh, that transition.
Thank you. I did my best. I think this was a bad episode for Joe. I think this was a really bad episode for Joe. And I kind of regret having him at number 2. I kind of put him there because at first I just washed away a lot of his faults. And I'm like, him and Eva are kind of interchangeable for me anyways. So I'll keep Joe at number 2 because I think he has a stronger edit. But I think this was a pretty rough episode because I think a lot of his story so far finally got challenged today. I think him constantly trying to be a hero and like let people know like, hey, it's not looking good, bub. I might have to vote you out, to Mary, only for Mary to be like, this is not good gameplay from Joe. This is not good for the jury. Like, this is just, I can tell what he's doing. Only for Star to get voted out anyways. He
Like,
got negative in it.
Yeah, so there are I know what you mean by like the jury management thing, but here's another thing. You're right. You know, that whole conversation with Mary, and Mary saying in her confessional, like, you think that you're just gonna say that to me and expect me to vote for you to win?
Yeah.
No, that's not how it's gonna happen. Joe can make it to the end, and sure, some people might vote for Joe because they respect that gameplay, but not everyone is going to respect Joe or see Joe in the same light that we have, if that makes sense. Like in the game, like
Yeah.
they see a very different side of Joe because Joe has a very similar style as Eva, you know, cold shoulder. Like if you're on the bottom or if you're somebody that Joe is considering to vote out, I feel that, you know, Joe doesn't really listen. Joe is blindly loyal. And I feel like it's that wall that's going to hurt in the end, you know? An alliance that runs all the way to the end could also be a detriment to somebody in the final travel.
Yeah. I also just think, I keep thinking back to Chrissy, right, who really didn't have a lot to say throughout the course of the season that was shown to us. But I don't think that Chrissy or Cedric, a lot of the early jurors, are going to necessarily care about the honesty thing. And I think what's going to happen is Chrissy and Cedric, they're not really going to care that Joe was like an honorable guy because Joe didn't really do anything with them anyways and just kind of pagong them a part of his alliance. And then David also feels really burnt by Joe. Star and Joe, that's kind of a weird alliance to like go with. Like, I don't know their relationship too well. And I feel like Camilla and Mary aren't going to be keen or quick to vote Joe. Camilla's a bit of a wild pick. I just think that she would value gameplay and strategy over like.
Camilla would vote Kyle over anyone.
She'd vote. I'm also assuming that Joe and Kyle aren't going to the end together. I just don't see that world happening. And so it's like there's a world where like Joe doesn't win a jury, you know, like, and that's kind of the problem with Joe is that I think Joe has a ceiling, and I think Joe got very, very lucky. It's kind of like a bell curve, you know. It's like a lot of his archetype get voted out at the David spot, but because David's also in the game, it's like he was able to buy himself some more time, but the walls are closing in for him. Also, Brian, like low key, I kind of see it. Like a Joe, Mitch, and Cheyenne final travel council, I 100% see. I think Mitch beats Eva at fire making. That's not even a crackpot theory. That is just fact. That's what's happening. Yeah, no. I mean, I see Joe making final tribal council, but do I see him winning? It's harder to say.
He's up there. He'll get votes. I don't think that Joe will get as many votes as this next player.
The next player, I think, is going to get the majority of the votes, making them the sole survivor of Survivor 48. It is Cheyenne, who, another weird episode. But here's the one real thing about Cheyenne I want to bring up. And I want to bring it up when we're talking about Eva and Joe. And also, like, Camilla and Mitch. Why wasn't he the backup? They hyped up Joe as the Superman figure who, like, need to go out as at a moment's notice. He wins immunity, and everyone just shuts down all conversations and then marry and start turn on each other. When Shaheen is a sketchy player that no one trusts, a threat to win the game, and like was targeted before.
But people like Shaheen because like he's fun. They said that at the reward.
Yeah, like he's a fun guy. I'm not calling him out. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying, why wasn't he the decoy? Like you would think that they would vote. Like they obviously they want Joe gone. I get that, but it's like if you're not doing Joe, there's Eva and Shaheen. Eva has two advantages that everyone and their grandma knows about. So whatever. She's also immune. Just who cares? But like they have to think that maybe they wouldn't use the advantage on Shaheen. And just maybe now's the perfect time because they can still pull in Kyle and Camilla. Camilla wants Shaheen gone or wanted Shaheen gone. Then like they just don't. And he got no votes. And I'm thinking back, remember when I talked about trends and narratives and I brought up D and Jam? Shaheen said he just needs to stay in total control, not be the sucker, and he'll be fine. What is happening? I think this wasn't like a coronation episode. I don't think this was like a crazy episode. I do think this was the best episode for Shaheen to have after the last episode. And for that reason, you know, Brian, I'm glad you're better than me because I had Eva at my number 1, episode 1, but I had him as my pre-game pick. I had him as my just like gut feeling, my fan favorite. I was rooting for him. I am eating good right now, guys, and there's still a chance he can lose. By the way, it's not like locked in.
But nobody's targeting Shaheen.
But the fact that no one targeted him is crazy.
I think that's why I kind of put him there. I haven't heard anybody on the jury or anybody in the game really speak negatively about Shaheen. And it's other people's gameplay that's kind of tanking and their jury management that's really not being recognized that I think Shaheen is really excelling in. And Shaheen's playing an under-the-radar game, even though Shaheen is a very vocal player this game that people really trust and want to work with. That's where I'm starting to see the win equity. I mean, I've always kept Shaheen in the back of my mind. However, I had to reward gameplay. And now that gameplay is kind of starting to be left in the dust, it's opening it up for other people as we're getting more information from the cast. And Shaheen, I think right now Shaheen probably is in the best spot to win this game, even if Shaheen sits next to Joe. Shaheen was vulnerable the entire time. Joe won 3 immunities. Joe is 2 more away from tying the record.
Yeah. And Brian also, I know you brought up Say, she said, I want to go to someone in a position of power and goes to Shaheen. And that wasn't like a crazy big moment. That's just a small nugget. And I understand, Daryl, you think he could be a losing finalist. I see that too. I don't think David's final tribal. I think him being called delusional. I'm sorry for stuttering. Him being called delusional could mean that he makes it to the final tribal council because it's like he could be trying to hype up his own game because he's at final tribal council. I don't listen to exit comments unless I think it can correlate to something we are either seeing or not seeing. But I disagree with Shaheen being like Charlie. I think Charlie was another figure, and I think contextually, Charlie's position is a lot more different than Shaheen's. So I think Charlie in 46, he was always in the driver's seat, but that's kind of where it ended. We didn't really know who Charlie was as a person outside of being a Swiftie. And I also think Charlie kind of had a weird edit because of how the final tribal council shook out. I'm not going to comment if I think he was robbed or not, but it was clear that he was a clear strategic favorite going into it. And, you know, he kind of did everything right and kind of didn't win. And I also think that was his narrative at the start of the season. Probe said not one person's not winning the game no matter what. And that was kind of a narrative that was locked in the frame. Shaheen's narrative is, I'm going to stay in control the entire way. And I just appreciate Daryl so much in this community, bro. He's fighting a 1v10 right now. But you know what, Daryl? I got you, man. And I don't know, Zans. They call it the final tribal council because it's final. Who knows? But I think that might be it for my opinions on Shaheen, at least. Is there anything you had left? I feel like we talked about the top 4 while talking about everyone else. And we're kind of at that point now where unless something crazy happens this next episode, which part of me doubts, but who knows?
I think we have our locked in. Because this was the first week, if anybody else noticed, that, Will and I had pretty spot on the same.
Yeah.
Length. We only had our 3 and our 4 flips. So that was our Eva, our Kyle spot. We're both flipped. That was the only option that we had flipped this entire time. So I think this is starting to be what that power ranking is looking like. This is where the overall, ranking. This is the totem pole. This is where we're at in the game. I mean, that will change, but it'll be the top 4 that'll keep flipping.
Yeah.
Unless, something happens.
Unless Camilla has the greatest 4-episode arc that we're not seeing. But I've counted her out. I've counted out Mitch. And I'm pretty close to cutting out Kyle. I'm not gonna lie.
You know what would be so funny?
What?
If that little conversation that Kyle, Camilla, Joe, and Shaheen all had with that alliance that they had in Vula 2.0. Imagine if that was the final 4.
That would be improbable, but
if that's the final 4,
that would be a very campy final 4.
Honestly, I see Shaheen beating anyone in Fire, even with Joe.
Do you think there's a world where Joe and Eva go to Fire? I think it's like my last.
If that's the case, Joe loses. Remember, Joe said that he'd sacrifice his game. I think he'd give it up.
But I also think Eva, being the competitor she is, I don't think she'd want to be given that spot. I think what's going to happen if they do go to Fire Tribal Count or a Fire Making, I think if it's Joe and Eva, I think there's going to be like a big emotional moment where Joe's going to be like, Do you just want to make it the final tribal council? Do you want me to throw? And then Eva's gonna be like, no, I need to compete. I need to be a competitor. And Joe's gonna be like, I understand. And then Joe just completely wipes the floor with Eva at Fire Making. That's my head. I realistically, I think it's Eva and Mitch, but that's my theory. If they both,
I think it's a good theory. I think it's possible, for sure.
Anything's possible though, if you think about it.
Anything
like me playing some Survivor riffs. No, my guitar is so badly out of tune. No. Anywho, my last thing I also want to throw out too with Daryl, Eva shouldn't be very good at explaining herself. I agree with that. I think Eva having a cold shoulder, I think that ultimately can be explained, and I think players would understand why she can be a little cold to the players in the bottom. I think it's just part of who she is, and I think people would accept that. I think they can comment that she's cold, that's just criticisms, and I don't think that it's bitterness towards Eva. But I think that might be it for me, man. I ain't gonna lie.
I think I'm in the same boat. I had the I feel like my last comment is Shaheen is here not because I saw something that was a big game move. I feel like you were right. You convinced me throughout the previous few episodes of like, just how everybody was always going to Shaheen, and he was always
Mhm.
making his moves by not really being seen and kind of having smaller conversations because everybody wanted to come to him. I just feel like it was just the fumble. There was
Yeah.
an opportunity to make even more moves, and it just
Yeah.
when you have the opportunity to run the game, take it. Do it. Sure,
100%.
if you proposed an opportunity for, I don't know, Mary and Mitch to be on the top, Camilla, Kyle, run that. You don't have to go through Shaheen and Eva and Joe anymore.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I feel like that's the narrative we've been seeing so far. Obviously, the rug can get pulled at any moment, but I feel more confident with Shaheen being the winner than I do at this point than with Rachel being the winner this time last season.
Really? Okay.
Last season I was pretty content on Rachel winning. However, there's still some doubts because of how strong the rest of the players were, right? And I agree with that too, Jay. It's hard to say. And I think we should talk to Randy about this as well. Like Daryl was right all along, or maybe it's StockWatch 49 episode 1. Which am I able to confirm that? I might have just leaked that. Wasn't me. Anywho, I would like to remind everyone too about the slew of wonderful shows we have. We have the pre-show 7 p.m. right before the episodes, and then you can enjoy the post-show after the episodes. There's also got something for y'all. Saturdays 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Survivor Social Sundays at 8 p.m. And honestly, no, Survivor Australia has ended. I'm a good Survivor fan. I trust me, guys. And you can also check out the Patreon as well. A lot of cool stuff and new apparel. Buy our t-shirts. Please support us. Anywho, I think that is it. Josh, speak now or hold your peace until next week.
That's my speech. My no more words. Just